As every other genre of film, horror has its wide array of subgenres. However, the one that you are more likely to find sitting at the bottom of the horror iceberg is body horror. I'm going to have to be honest, body horror gets probably the same reaction out of me as it does most people. That strong feeling of uneasiness and being uncomfortable in your own body. I'm not the biggest fan of the feeling it comes with, but I love everything else about it. There's so much that goes into the craft, and when it comes to film, the special effects work is off the charts. There's a reason The Thing is labeled one of the greatest horror movies ever made. We talked about psychological horror a number of times, and the fear of losing your sanity and how the movie can toy with you in those ways to really dig deep. However, body horror comes with an added layer of losing control and being dysmorphed. It more heavily relies on a physical fear rather than an emotional one. Like I said prior, I don't genuinely enjoy the full feeling sitting through a movie like Tusk that is heavily within that category. So with that being said, I never tended to watch these types of movies, but I have seen a few that I would like to talk about. However, before we dive into examples of body horror and its usage, we need to fully understand why body horror is as scary as it is. I'll have chapters set up below so you can skip around to the examples if you so please. Body horror is described as the idea of the body being deconstructed or degenerated or mutilated or whatever violent word you want to use. There's actually a term known as dysmorphophobia or body dysmorphic disorder, which is, and I'm generally speaking here, considered to be a fear of an imagined flaw of one's physical appearance. In most movies where the transformation is a big part of the movie, you could see where this fear is able to be exploited, where little changes are happening over time to these characters, or the unsettling reality of what is to happen is starting to come. These can come in even natural forms like aging, but when it comes to these movies, it's normally a fate worse than death. From what I have seen, the most effective usages of body horror is where the victim would rather just die than continue to live out the ways in this new form, and that's terrifying. It's the closest visualization of hell I can think of. Now let's get into these gross yet very effective movies. The Human Centipede is coming first because I remember being very little when this film came out and being told the premise and being forever avoidant of the movie. Then, as always, one night, a couple years later, I got a little too curious and started watching the first one. To be quite honest, the first movie was not as bad as I was expecting it to be. Bad isn't super gross, the movie itself story-wise and pacing-wise is kind of a mess, but we're not being critical here, we're being analytical. If you are so lucky to not already know The Human Centipede, it's about these two girls who get into an accident. This random guy helps them out and takes them home, but it turns out this guy is a crazy doctor who has been obsessed with this idea of creating a human centipede. The whole movie is basically him going over the technicalities of everything, and the scary part is when your brain tells you, yeah, this could actually happen. If someone was crazy enough to do it, they could just do this. And that alone was enough for me to be like, bah. Once the movie gets into the actual creation of the human centipede, it's pretty disturbing, but I wasn't like vomiting. The end, from what I remember, is also pretty bleak, and true bleak endings I am also not a big fan of. You might be saying, oh, well, he's saying the human centipede isn't so bad, so maybe I could survive this. Wait. Just wait. You see, I thought the same thing, that, oh wow, this first movie wasn't so bad. Let me go on to watch The Human Centipede 2. This movie is one of the most foul, disgusting, putrid movies I have ever laid my eyes on. I had to send out a warning text to everyone I knew after I finished it to stay away from it. Then a couple years later proceeded to show everyone I know the movie. I don't really know how much I can really get into this movie, but I will try my best not to get too much. The Human Centipede 2 exists where the first movie is just that. It's a movie. And our lead character, I am not going to say protagonist, is like clinically obsessed over this movie and over centipedes, and it's a whole setup for disaster. He is so obsessed, he had been collecting victims over the course of a while to create his own human centipede. Except this dude ain't no doctor, and he doesn't really know what he's doing. So his creation of the centipede is a lot more dirty and unprofessional, is all I will say, and the movie does not hold back. I always tell people this movie is all in black and white, except one scene where we get the color brown. This movie symbolizes a lot of what I fear in body horror, and I don't blame people for showering after watching it. Now, a couple years ago, I was trying to expand my catalog a little bit and stumbled upon what was considered the grossest movie of all time, and it was called Bite. Now granted, I had already seen The Human Centipede 2 and was not about to be fazed by anything later in life. And honestly, fortunately, I was right. Bite, in my opinion, was not anywhere as gross as Human Centipede 2, but I did find it effective. It is a bit weird I watched Bite yet and have never seen The Fly, but I do plan on getting to that movie sooner or later. But however, Bite is about a girl who gets bit by some weird insect on a vacation, and we later discover it was no ordinary insect. Our main character throughout the movie starts to go through pretty disturbing changes as she starts to turn into this insect hybrid thing. She's laying eggs, she's spitting acid, and overall, just the imagery is pretty gross, and it's very bug-like, and not a lot of people are big bug fans. While the story of this movie was rocky, the effects were pretty well done, so I would say it is overall a good watch if you are into body horror and all things like that. I don't think I'll have too much to say about The Thing, just because it is so popular, and most of you, I imagine, have already seen it. But I saw The Thing for the first time at a re-showing at my local theater, and was pretty much blown away. While the human centipede is just nasty, and most of its body horror is shock value, The Thing is trying to tell you something. The Thing is about an alien creature who crashes down to Earth and has the ability to take the form of any creature. The use of body horror is so intelligently used in this movie, I could go on and on. At its core, you become invested in the discovery and the fear of this unknown creature. In the big moment where the guy's stomach bursts open, it's both terrifying and awe-inspiring to see this unimaginable, never-before-seen imagery. The weight behind that scene is tenfold, and it's just a genre-defining moment and a history-defining moment in film that you could just feel radiating off the frame. I won't really be talking about specific zombie media, but more so the idea of zombies as a whole. And it's not the fear of zombies, but the fear of becoming a zombie that is the body horror. It's an infection taking over your mind, and there's an uncertainty of how much of you is still inside. This topic is tackled a bit in The Last of Us, which is perfect. And I know there are some in-game moments that hint at the fact that the people they once were are still trapped inside their mind. VHS 2 also covered this in the zombie tape, where our main zombie character cries at the sound of his girlfriend's voice before ending his life. Weight adds everything. The zombie media has definitely been oversaturated over the years, but you rarely ever see the discussion of being the zombie ever really handled, I feel, and that is way more terrifying than living in a world with them. Overall, I feel it's a bit of a rarer group of people who genuinely enjoy body horror in its truest and most shocking sense. I guess I could only be saying that because I don't particularly react well with it. If I'm being honest, it was a little difficult to find some good inspiration for this video when it comes to people's thoughts and feelings on the genre as a whole. It truly seems like we just don't really talk about body horror all that much. And after seeing the type of stuff is on this list, can you really blame them?